Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 392 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The Second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and tonight I am joined by the greatest hostess in the entire universe. She is amazing. She is radiant. She is perfect. Oh my goodness, I'm not worthy. Aaron Paulette! How you doing, Aaron?
I am constantly amazed and astounded by the way that gun owners will throw allies under the bus just because they're different, or because you're icky, or your politics are slightly not mine.
Yeah, I am also disheartened by this, in the fact that, again, we state pretty much one of the mottos of the Assorted Calibers podcast is the Second Amendment is nonpartisan. Part of creating this, number one, because I think we're all kind of political misfits on our own. We've all got our own various views, and you know, some may lean further one way than others and stuff like that. But we're all kind of despise every politician and there's enough right wing and conservative Second Amendment podcasts. I said, you know what, that would be a good angle. Let's make sure this is a nonpartisan and friendly to the left of center, underrepresented gun owners, and boy, it's just it's like emptying a dump truck with a spoon. Yeah.
So before we get into that, and that is topic number one, how are you doing, Weird?
I am doing better. The maybe it's allergies. It was in fact not allergies. I was sick. It was one of those torturous colds, in the fact that I never got like really, really badly sick. I never at one point was just like, I just want to stay in bed today, or anything like that. I was just sick enough that it was annoying, and it was annoying for now over a week, and I am pretty much out of the woods now. But it was especially having laryngitis when you're a podcaster and also someone who will not shut up is dreadful. And it gave my daughter a new angle. Shut up, Dad! Your voice sounds like crap. She's out of line, but she's not wrong. So yeah, I'm feeling a bunch better. We're recording it on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, which was very fortuitous. You had some family stuff going on. You're like, I'd rather do it tomorrow, and I said, yeah, that's all right, and that was a good choice because I'm like loads better. I actually hit the hello internet. It was a little weak, but I did it, and for the first time in a week. So there we go.
Yeah, my sister came to visit, and she's from Texas, and she was here over the weekend, and she had to leave for the airport at like 6 o'clock this morning. And anyone who knows me knows that I don't do mornings. And so I needed to say my goodbyes to her the night before. And so trying to work that around a podcast, I just thought that was going to be a whole lot of trouble. And that's why I said, hey, Weird, we might need to punt this to Tuesday. And your response was, well, on the one hand, I want to get it done, but on the other hand, I'd really love to get some sleep and let my voice heal. And it's just like, okay, sold. We're doing it tomorrow.
Yeah, that was one of the unfortunate symptoms of this cold is, and I'm still, my eyes pop open at alarmingly early times. Alarmingly early for me, like 3. And it just goes, either you're not really that tired anymore, or you're just uncomfortable enough that you're not going to get back to sleep. So might as well just get up, eat a whole bunch of over-the-counter drugs, and start your day.
Were you so sick that you were having the repetitive dream?
No, I was not. And
okay, good.
And also I'm trying to think if I know of, definitely opiates. The times that I've been like on opiate painkillers, I would get the repetitive dream. But and I'm trying to think if like nasal decongestants have ever caused me to have weird dreams. They definitely caused me to have weird lucid states, but yeah. And then between the fact that I was maintaining my normal podcasting schedule, and my daughter and I went to a concert together, and it was awesome.
Steam powered giraffe.
What's that?
Was it steam powered giraffe?
It was not steam powered giraffe. It was an artist known as Emmeline. I don't know how well known she is. She's well known in our household, but it's going through that, and it was a postage stamp of a theater. It was at the Middle East in Cambridge, and I'd been to the Middle East before, but not this room. This one was even smaller than the very small intimate concert venue that I'd been to before, and so like we were just like right up against the stage, and just like, oh wow, like I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable because you're singing to me, literally, because you're looking at me. There's nobody else you're looking at. And so,
if this had been a Lucy Darling show, she would have roasted you.
Oh, absolutely. And I would have deserved it because I was in a room full of like teenage to 20-something girls. And here's the 6-foot bearded graying man in a red flannel sweatshirt. I was literally flannel daddy. And I was very happy to proudly be, yes, I am flannel daddy. This is my daughter. She is having a great time. I am also having a great time. She sang Strut, and I'm like, yeah, that's my song. I was hoping she would sing that one. But yeah, no, it was a great time. And just, I mean, I told her as we were leaving, I'm like, you're going to have to work real hard from age 12 to get a better concert venue. I actually told my wife the only other concert that is on par with as good as this one was when we saw Rob Zombie open for Ozzy Osbourne. And interestingly, and it was at the Worcester Centrum. So it was hilarious. They're two completely different. One was like 200 people in a phone booth, and we're right up against the stage, and the very, very low production. They're just very, very simple, simple show and all that. And then the other one was a massive arena with huge set pieces and special effects and pyrotechnics and all of that, and just like massive rock stars and all that. And just one of those like, yeah, that's the only other way you get to beat this as far as a concert experience. And I got to see Ozzy Osbourne's butt.
Like his bare butt?
He mooned the crowd, yes. Okay. He mooned the entire Worcester Centrum. So yeah, no, we had an absolutely great time. It'll be even cooler if her or her opening act, which was oh shoot, now I'm drawing a blank because I wasn't thinking about talking about all of this, but Desi, Dezi, and I'd never heard of her. My daughter had, so that was awesome for her, but she's also alarmingly talented, and so if either one of those gets massive, and we'll be like those people that like we used to go drink at this pub at Liverpool, and I don't know, there were these two guys called the Beatles that were playing. Yeah, they were pretty good. So I guess that's enough pleasantries. Do we want to get into what you teased?
I take issue with the word tease because usually that's something pleasant. I don't know what the good word for it is. Forewarned, maybe. Look, if you've been paying attention at all to my social media, and I haven't been doing social media lately, you'll know exactly what's going on. But we are going to talk about the 34 proposed changes by the ATF at modernizing gun regulations. And I actually have not read all of them because I've been focusing on my little corner of the planet. I figure Weird will have most of them. And, they're nearly all good. except for I definitely one. I kind of feel like someone had a problem with another one. So, all right, let's just get into it. Weird.
Okay, well, let's. I would prefer let's just get the one that you don't like out of the way, and then we can talk about the positive stuff to lift everybody back up. How's that sound?
Oh, hey, it sounds functional. Okay, so I'm gonna preface this by saying that everyone who is griping about the ATF adding non-binary to the sex category on the Form 4473, I just want to point out that particular change happened during Trump's first term. And so you would think that if he had a problem with this when it was added in December of 2019, that he could have changed it between that point and when he left office in January of 2021. He did not. And so he got elected, and then on his first day, he issued that executive order that refused to acknowledge the existence of people who are intersex, and said that there's only two sexes that we recognize, male and female, and you all know where I stand on that, and I don't need to revisit it. And so in November of 2025, and I really want to point this out, that a reporter called Eve Weston of the Eugene Weekly actually scooped everyone that I'm aware of, because she contacted me well before this happened, obviously. And so she wanted to get my opinion on it, and so I crafted a press release in order to give her the official position, and then nothing happened. And so I thought that the issue was dead, that it was a proposed leak that didn't go anywhere, much like what happened earlier that September when the Department of Justice floated the idea of making it illegal for transgender people to own guns, and every single gun rights organization said not just no, but hell no, because they could see how that would be abused. So I thought this was dead, and so I just sat on this press release, because if it isn't going to happen, there's no point in showing it. And so here we are. Whenever this information was released, I don't even remember if it was like a Thursday or a Friday, but it has consumed my weekend. And one of the changes, I should say proposed changes, is that in addition to removing non-binary from the 4473, it will require people to list their biological sex. And everyone who's read my press release knows where I stand on this, but Weird has asked me to address it, and so I will. So remember that the Form 4473 is filled out under oath, essentially. You know, if you lie on it, you are guilty of, I believe it's perjury. If it's not specifically perjury, you were definitely lying to law enforcement. But it's a felony that can get you a massive fine and up to 10 years in prison. And so you want to be as honest as possible. And so this new regulation forces lawful gun owners who are transgender into an impossible bind. Because, okay, so let's assume that there is a transgender woman who wants to buy a firearm, and she has socially transitioned, she's on the hormones, she has had the gender reassignment surgery, is completely living life as a female, but for whatever reason has not been able to change her gender marker on her identification. Like here in Florida, you can't change your gender marker. So she goes in, tries to buy a gun, is female presenting in every possible way, but the driver's license says male, and she writes male on the 4473. Now, it's reasonable to assume that the FFL will look at it and say, well, okay, this matches the official document, you're okay, but they might decide, you know what, you wrote down male, but you don't look male, you look female, and this seems hinky to us, and so we're just going to completely nix the sale, which is their right to do. So now this woman who is doing everything perfectly legally has been denied her constitutional right to purchase a gun, and she's got to go through it again and again and hope that someone allows her to buy a firearm. There's also the fact that you've got to remember that the 4473 is a form for a law enforcement agency. And if you, if the gun you bought is used in a crime, and I'm not even saying you committed the crime, but the gun gets lost, it gets stolen, you sold it to someone else, the ATF is going to start tracking it down with the serial number, and then it's going to lead back to you, and they're going to want to talk to you. And they're going to be looking for, well, gee, if it's checked male, they're going to be looking for a man, but you look like a woman. And so if the ATF decides to make an example of you, and as we've seen lately, the ATF loves making an example of gun owners. Just look at Brian Malinowski in Little Rock, Arkansas. They could decide, hey, you knowingly provided false information to law enforcement, and so we're going to prosecute you for that. And, of course, if she puts down female, and maybe she actually has been able to change her gender marker, then if the ATF, and I admit this is a much longer shot, but the ATF is, this government administration has already proven itself to be hostile to trans people, then there is the very real possibility that as ATF agents are doing investigations, they could come to the conclusion, oh, look, I see that you're trans, but you wrote down female, but you're not, because this law says you specifically have to write down your biological sex. And so there is a no-win situation here for people. And yes, a lot of people have said, this will never happen. And I'm saying, why do you trust that the government in general, but especially the ATF, is going to show any sort of kindness? What makes you think that? What in the Waco Ruby Ridge makes you think that the ATF will show any sort of compassion or understanding or restraint? I think it's a lot smarter to assume a worst case scenario. And so this is a catch-22, and it's not a safety measure. I say it's a trap. Because again, the DOJ floated, let's prevent transgender people from owning guns, and they got shut down that way. So now they're doing it this way, which is extra steps, but it still leads to the same result, because what they're trying to do now is frighten people into not exercising their constitutional right, because the only legal way outside of a private sale is to simply not buy a firearm. And that's really, I think, what government wants. And it doesn't matter whether you are Republican or Democrat. Government doesn't like armed people because an armed citizenry can resist them. And so I don't know where I stand, whether this is deliberate targeting malice or just sort of a passive malice that can nonetheless come back to bite people. But I know that I am not going to gamble my safety on the kindness, the understanding, and the compassion of the ATF. No, I'm going to assume that Federal Leviathan is going to grind me under its heel if I do anything that it doesn't like. And so that's why I absolutely hate this rule. And as I pointed out earlier, non-binary was added during Trump's administration. And so why the sudden turn? Well, I'd say that he's pandering to a political base. Oh, hey, look, what year is it? Why, it's midterm elections year. So I don't think this is about anything other than stirring up discontent in order to fire up the voter base, and a lot of innocent people are going to be hurt in the process. And so I say that the federal government doesn't get to play gotcha with constitutional rights. and that this is literally a paperwork contradiction designed either accidentally or deliberately, that's what I think, to intimidate a minority group out of exercising their Second Amendment rights, raises serious equal protection and due process concerns. And so this is not regulation, this is disenfranchisement disguised as regulation. And I have been getting such crap over this by conservatives and FUDs and people who just, well, it doesn't affect me, so I don't see what the problem is. And they're calling me, hysterical and a worrymonger, and, why should we bend to your desires? No one else gets this sort of thing. No one else, what was it? Yeah, the ATF caved to pressure back in 2019. And as you said, Weird, during the pre-show thing, every single change that has happened to the 4473 and a lot of ATF rulings in general has come about because they caved to pressure, because they're a government institution. That's how this works. And so I don't understand why gun owners decide that they're going to be partisan and kick people under the bus rather than saying, if this can be used to disenfranchise one type of people, it can then be used to disenfranchise other types of people. Because, hey, what's going to happen when an anti-gun liberal presidency comes into power? And this is in effect. And that's a whole other rant. But I'm saying weaponizing psychiatry is not good for anyone, because literally the next people that are going to be disarmed for the good of themselves and society will be veterans with PTSD. And so I've been dealing with that, and I've been asking around saying, hey, gun rights organization, are you going to help us with this? And the answer is no! Go fudge yourself! And I'm really discouraged. And so, while I sincerely hope that this doesn't get worse for other people down the line, if it does, it's going to be very difficult for me not to do an ugly laugh and say, this is what you wanted, because you could have stopped it. There is the potential here to, if not remove the need for the 4473, but we could gut it. I understand why back in the past they had sex on there, because it was done in the 60s before everything was computerized. And so if you needed to describe someone, you would say male or female. But today, with everything being computerized, all they'll need to do is look up your name or your social security number on a database, and they will pull up your driver's license, and they will be able to see what you look like. There is no need for this information, and honestly, a lot of this is not any business of the government. And people are saying, well, all you have to do is put down your biological sex. What's the big deal? Right, because when police are describing someone, who's a person of interest or sending something out over the radio, they care about what your genetics are and not how you look. Apparently, that concept escapes a lot of people, and I've explained it enough times that I'm going, you are either profoundly retarded or you are being woefully difficult, because I don't see how you're not getting this. So that's what I'm going through. We have a chance. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but I'm saying we have a chance to gut a lot of 4473 over this, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen because most of the gun rights groups are going to go, it doesn't affect us, so it's okay. And so that has made me very upset. And so now here to talk about everything else is Weird.
Yeah, I will also say that this actually reminds me greatly of a very close friend of mine who had a non-binary passport once that was allowed, and then had to change it back after Trump took office because That was no longer allowed. And they essentially said, I am never going to, no matter what happens, I'm never going to put anything but my biological sex on a government document again, because there's always a chance that even if things get better, they might get hostile again. And it's not worth my safety. But they were like, but also at the same time, am I being a fool because I've documented on government things that I consider myself non-binary? So even if I changed it back, there's always the mark that I did do that. And my advice to any of you people who have a similar fashion that are reverting to your biological sex, even though that is not how you identify, and I respect that choice, and no, that does not mean that you are caving or anything like that. Just I agree with this decision. If there's ever an instance in this dystopian future that I hope never happens, where you are being questioned in a Spanish Inquisition style on if what your perceived sex is, the answer is it was just a phase, because the people who will be hostile to somebody who is gender fluid will revel in the idea that somebody is going to say that gender fluidity can be just a phase. And that doesn't mean you have to believe it. And that doesn't mean you have to be a good liar, because they will want to believe it. So that's just a little survival tactic from Uncle Weird. But yeah, moving on to some of the better stuff on this. So they are officially pushing back on both pistol braces and bump stocks. Note that bump stocks were in there because of Trump. So, Aaron, you mentioned that, Trump put the non-binary on the 4473. Well, he also put the bump stocks on the machine gun list, and now he's taking them back off. So,
about damn time.
Yeah, it is about damn time, but it's also saying that Trump is not a friend to gun owners. He is just a political animal that is doing what he thinks is the right thing, which on one hand is fine because, hey, guess what? That's what a representative democracy is. It shouldn't be the whim of the person we're sending in there. They're there to do a job. A person should be voting for something that they personally find abhorrent because their constituents don't agree with them. But that's not a thing that happens here as a general rule. So we got rid of that. There is, again, changes to the 4473, digital sales records, which, I mean, it's one of those, some of the people talk about like gun shops where floors have literally collapsed because there's so many reams of paperwork in the back rooms. So this is a good thing. And simplifying the process for registering machine gun suppressors and other NFA items. There's a lot of things like the getting rid of the reporting to your local law enforcement officer, having to get a permission slip from the ATF if you want to cross state lines. Overall, it is a lot of really, really good things. I have linked to the Trace for this, and their article is very, very negative. And so if the Trace is unhappy, then this is overall good.
Hey, I want to point out that the Trace doesn't say anything about my issue here. Gosh, I was under the impression that Bloomberg was a good liberal Democrat and he would care about these things. Nope. Sure doesn't.
Nope. And also to them, it is more important to be bad mouthing the Second Amendment and all.
It's more important
stuff
to disarm everyone.
Yep. Then say, well, at least they got one thing right. So that's I was looking for a good news source to put in there, and I saw the Trace, and I went, you know what? Perfect. Cry some more. So overall, this is good for us, and the new ATF director is going through. But again, it's all political movements. So, and unfortunately, this administration is not pro-gun, but they are definitely stridently anti-trans. So away we go with that.
Because God forbid people live their lives according to what they think is best and not harm other people while doing so.
Yep. So yeah, that's all I want to touch on with that. That's ATF now is under new management. There's a new director in place, and there's definitely some chips are being moved up the field. So overall, it's good. I just wish it was 100% good. But moving on to another thing again. Actually, I don't know if we actually reported on Pam Bondi, because I think she got booted, quietly resigned, however you want to put it. We don't really know how hard she was asked to leave. But Pam Bondi, someone who we have pointed out has never been a friend of the Second Amendment, is out of the DOJ, and so which, I mean, can't be too bad, and so now the DOJ is actively asking Denver. Denver specifically has a citywide assault weapons ban, and specifically Harmeet Dillon, who has been really the Second Amendment side of the DOJ, is demanding that they cease enforcing their ban on large capacity magazines and assault rifles. And Denver has told them to go pound sand, but the key factor is that the DOJ is the one that is making these demands, and so the DOJ will be pushing the lawsuit. And as I've noted, Donald Trump is not a fan of the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court has not been doing a great job at hearing Second Amendment cases, and or really cases in general. And that is definitely something that President Trump could do, is light a fire under them and say, hey, let's get going with some of these Second Amendment cases, especially the ones that are solid winners for us, so that those of us behind the Iron Curtains can get a little fresh air. But that has not been a priority for him. But because the DOJ is urging this, does show that at least on this angle, and possibly the larger implications being that it's assault weapons ban and magazine capacity ban, that as if Denver continues to not comply with the request, that this may get rushed up the ladder just so Trump can save face.
I just want to know, and this is more a rhetorical question, really, why that Harmeet Dillon wasn't promoted to Attorney General when Bondi exited. I really like her.
Yeah.
And I would like for her to be AG. And it's just, I know who she is. I don't know who this other guy is.
Well, I would say, if anything, I would say she seems to be very, very focused on the Second Amendment. And if she was director, she would have to divide her focus. That's the only good explanation I have. There's probably a lot of bad explanations I could give, but that's the one I'm gonna be crossing my fingers and hoping for.
I suppose so.
All right. Well, this next one actually transitions into our first segment. But I mentioned that DOJ is under new management and ATF is under new management, and in light of this, several state lawmakers are demanding essentially to reopen the investigation on the death of Brian Malinowski, who was the director of the Little Rock Airport, and was killed by ATF agents in what was effectively a no-knock raid.
I would like to amend that to murdered.
Yeah, that's certainly something that can be debated on, and so and you know what? Let's not mince any more words, because just as I was typing up, I was typing up this thing. Actually, he had contacted me a little bit earlier, and it was either while I was on vacation or during the time when my father had the stroke, and I was just not able to. I was doing just the barest of minimum to keep functioning. But he sent me another email following up and saying, "Hey, I'm the attorney representing the Malinowski estate, and I'd love to come on your show to talk about this." And I'm saying, "Hey, I'm actually writing up show notes to talk about this right now. When are you available? And I was going to tease at this show, and he goes, actually, I'm free today. So without any more introduction, attorney Bud Cummins wants to talk about his involvement in this Malinowski case. I am pleased to welcome to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Bud Cummins. Bud, you are an Arkansas attorney, and you are representing the family or the estate of Brian Malinowski. How you doing, Bud?
I'm good. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. So first, you introduced yourself to me before we started recording. I'm just going to let you introduce yourself to the audience because you have quite the resume.
Well, might just be that I can't hold a job for very long, but I've done several things, and including I guess the most prominent things I've served as Governor Mike Huckabee's chief legal counsel in the late 1990s, and then later was appointed to be the United States Attorney in the Eastern District of Arkansas from 2001 to 2006. And since then, I've worked in the private sector, sometimes as an attorney, but also did a hitch at an investment firm and done some consulting and lobbying and some other things, but I still keep my hand. I'm still licensed in the state of Arkansas and the District of Columbia.
Okay, that is awesome. All right, and so I think most people who listen to the show should be aware of what happened to Brian Malinowski. I will put links in the show notes to the shows that we have covered. We've covered on this incident in the past. There's several. But could you give really just a brief overview of what happened on that day? Yeah.
Well, the background is he was the director of the Little Rock Airport, had been for quite a while. He was very successful at it. We have one of the few, less than 10, I think, debt-free airports in the country, which I think is a good indicator of good management. He was a hobbyist, lifelong coin collector, and I didn't know Brian, but by all accounts, he was kind of a wonk. If he got interested in something, he went deep. There were a lot of books on his shelf about coin collecting, and in the more recent years, his dad had given him a collection of family firearms, and his dad was getting old and said, "I don't need these anymore." And Brian got interested in guns, and so he was more interested in the gun, the collection aspect of gun ownership than he wasn't a big shooter, or he didn't go out and do combat drills or anything. He was a collector, and he discovered that he enjoyed going to gun shows. He could eventually started renting tables at gun shows, putting out his coins, putting out some guns, and even other items, sometimes toys and things. He liked to be there. Half the people at his funeral were from the gun show. That was kind of part of his social circle. And I think he just liked this, 5-6 weekends a year. He liked to go spend time at these gun shows and talk to people about coins and guns and what have you. ATF, for whatever reason, became suspicious that he had exceeded the safe harbor that's permitted all citizens to buy and sell firearms when it's not a business, when it's a hobby, when you're a collector without a federal firearms license, which means you don't have to do background checks, you don't have to do paperwork. They decided he'd exceeded that limit. What's frustrating is the definition is completely subjective. There is no objective test. You can't look and see, I can sell this many guns or not that many, or this frequency, or make this much money. And so the key thing is Brian had no idea they had a problem with it. They did that, although they've sent cease and desist letters many times to people similarly situated, they gave him no notice. Instead, they launched into what seems like an incredibly, they threw a lot of resources at it as if it was a very serious case, and it culminated in they executed a federal search warrant at his house on March 19th, 2024 at 6 a.m, an hour before sunrise, more than an hour, 32-degree morning, dark, and they knocked on his front door, waited no more than 28 seconds, and broke it down and came into his house. He and his wife just heard the doors coming in. He got out of bed, grabbed a pistol, went towards the front of the house, turned a corner, saw a silhouette of an armed man come in his front door, shot at his feet, and ATF agents returned fire and mortally wounded Brian.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. So I actually, one question I have always had, you do have confirmation from his widow that he did in fact fire on the officers.
Yeah, she really, I'm not sure that she knows for sure that he did. I think all the evidence points that we do have some bad audio that you can hear, I think it's about 4 shots that's one obvious report and then a clearly different gun firing 4 or 5 times in response. We know so that's 2 guns and we know the ATF shot last because they hit him in the forehead and mortally wounded him. So I think it's pretty clear that he shot first. He did shoot it. It's very also equally clear that he shot at their feet. I think, my speculation is that he was basically assumed they were home invaders. And he was saying to them, you guys may think nobody's home, but we are home. And in fact, I have a gun and you need to turn around and get the hell out of my house. Mm-hmm. I think that was what he was, trying to do by shooting at their feet. But of course, we don't know.
Yeah. And of course, I can't speak to his mindset, but even I know it states here in the timeline, which go in the show notes. This is an excellent timeline that you sent to me. It states in the timeline that they were planning on bringing a ballistic shield, but it just didn't end up getting to the front of the stack before they made entry. And I would argue that even if they were in full police uniform with ballistic shield, we have actually seen many cases where organized crime members have stacked up dressed as police officers and yelled police as they've broken into people's homes to catch them by surprise.
Right. If you go Google home invasion fake police, you'll come up with a number of reported incidents where people have tried to kick in doors and what have you and pretend to be law enforcement. I think it's what's something that's really significant to note here as we kind of start talking about some of the failures of the execution of that breach. This was not a SWAT team. A SWAT team is a designated roster of law enforcement personnel who train together regularly for very dangerous situations and go and compete in regional competitions and work as a team. This was not that. This was a bunch of ATF agents and some state and local task force ATF task force officers dressed as SWAT. This is not a team that practiced together. I don't know what training they had. The courts have not allowed us to depose anybody yet. So we're 2 years into this, but we don't know specifically what training they had, but they did not, it was not a SWAT team. They did not train together. And we've heard from quite a great number of people who have served on SWAT teams who, are very critical of how they bungled this.
I mean, that's wild. That I just assumed that this was at least an ATF entry team, but it was not.
It was just a collection of agents who had access to tactical gear.
And you know what? I'll just dive right into the thing that really shocked me that I actually hadn't heard until I read this timeline. Obviously, it was widely reported that none of the agents or the local police were wearing body cams, even though that is required under policy, at least of the ATF.
Correct. Yeah. It goes back to the Breonna Taylor case in Kentucky. I don't remember the year. Was that 2020 or 22 somewhere? It's kind of concurrent with the Black Lives Matter marches and what have you. In response to that, the Biden administration President Biden signed an executive order that greatly limited the use of no-knock entries and mandatorily required that federal law enforcement wear body-worn cameras in certain situations, which include the execution of search warrants. That was followed up by a memo by the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, that said without qualification, law enforcement, we're going to start wearing body-worn cameras in those situations. This was about 2 years after that, and ATF didn't have body-worn cameras, and their explanation is, well, we never found any money in the budget to buy them. So we're incrementally, sending them out to the field as we can afford to do it. Well, that's not what the policy said. That's not what the executive order said. It said it's mandatory. And the the Little Rock Police Department, who was there in support. They had been asked to come and work the perimeter and the street and what have you. They do have issued body-worn cameras, and they do have a mandatory policy, but inexplicably, they did not wear theirs either.
And I'm seeing here there's a quote from Special Agent Bass talking about how we assumed this house probably had a Ring camera, and we wanted to cover it up just so kind of if something went wrong. So I did put a piece of tape over that. He had a Ring. Well, he had a door camera. I don't know if it was specifically Ring.
It was a Ring.
And they put tape over that. I had not heard the line of if something did go wrong.
Yeah, it kind of jumps out, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because the whole purpose, this is not supposed to be a no-knock entry. It's supposed to be a knock and announce entry, which means that the first step is to fairly announce to the occupants of the dwelling that you're at the door and identify yourself as law enforcement and give them a reasonable opportunity to voluntarily come to the door, respond to the knock, and voluntarily admit the law enforcement into the house under the authority of the warrant that they have in their hand. So their first step before they ever knocked was to tape over the lens of the doorbell camera. I don't have a doorbell camera, but I think people that do buy those to help them know who's at the front door. So the fact that they taped over it seems like their intention was not to give him every opportunity to know who was at the front door so he could feel safe opening that door.
Yeah. And also if something goes wrong, it's the only thing I could think as the meme goes, what an odd thing to say. It is if he came out with a rifle and started shooting through the door at the officers, why wouldn't they want that recorded? And
well, I think in theory, if you thought you were about to get into a firefight, you might want to cover the doorbell because that would give him intelligence about their positioning and what have you, and put them in danger. But when law enforcement chooses these tactics, they're supposed to go through a threat assessment, and that threat assessment, usually is in the form of a piece of paper with a lot of check mark boxes. And does this person have a criminal history? Do they have a propensity for violence? Risk of escape, destruction of evidence, those kind of things. There's not one box that they would have checked here. This guy lived in a very quiet suburban neighborhood, probably in in about a 2,900 square foot modern home. They knew where the master bedroom was located on one floor in the back of the house, and he went to work every day at about the same time. He parked in the same parking space. He worked in a gun-free zone. They could have strolled into his office and said, "Hey, we got a warrant. Will you hop in the car and run out to your house with us? We need to do a search." They could have done dozens of things, short of what they did. But they actually chose the riskiest tactics they could have possibly chosen and then executed them incompetently.
Yeah, they could have, instead of knocking on his door, been sitting at the end of his driveway and walked up to him while he was going to his car.
Right. And I've seen FBI since this incident in 2 instances, and I'm sure, law enforcement likes to do this. They like to come with the SWAT guys and do all this stuff, and I think it's overused. But and we've had several experts who do SWAT training and what have you tell us, at a minimum, they could have done everything they did, come out with 10 carloads of agents in the dark of the night, surrounded the house, and then just called him on his cell phone and said, it's a call out. "Hey, Brian, we're out in the front yard. Look out your window. I'm the guy standing holding up the warrant. I'm standing next to a uniformed Little Rock police officer. He's got his lights on in his car. Would you come on out and let us execute this warrant?" They do that all the time.
Especially since it's pretty hard to burn a gun in a fireplace or flush one down the toilet.
Exactly. That's one of the points here that I think law enforcement, especially poorly trained law enforcement, may think they really don't have to wait very long, that the knock is just kind of a formality and they can kick the door in seconds, because the courts have allowed them to do that in drug cases because people flush drugs down the toilet. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that drug cases we haven't won the war on drugs in my lifetime, but we have kind of eviscerated the Fourth Amendment in many ways. But that's what the cases say. If it's a drug case, they make flush drugs, and so you can knock and wait 15 seconds and kick the door in. But this wasn't that case. There was no risk of destruction of evidence or any of the other factors that would have been considered an exigent circumstance that would have allowed them to knock and force the door open in that short amount of time.
Yeah. So I guess that leaves us. I think we've covered that pretty good, especially some of these things that are new to me and possibly new to our listeners. So now what's happening moving forward?
Well, nothing is the short answer. You would expect after this incident, I've been involved in, public controversies for 40 years. My name's been in the paper way too many times. Little Rock's a relatively small community, so people, I'm pretty approachable and people recognize me when I'm involved in something and they come talk to me about it. But those things die out pretty quick. This is 2 years later. And if I go to the grocery store this afternoon, somebody's going to come up to me and say, "Hey, Bud, by the way, what's going on with that Malinowski case? That thing was awful. Are they going to ever do anything about that?" People in central Arkansas, for sure, and farther away have not forgotten about this case. But that you would expect in something this dramatic, this tragic, and this seemingly unexplainable, that the authorities would come back at some point and kind of give a readback. Well, we've investigated this. This went wrong. These people have been disciplined. We've decided there's a hole in our training that we're going to fix. Whatever. Or say, hey, this went exactly as it should, and here's why. But they've never said a word. There was a hearing in Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee in May, just right after this, May of 2024. I testified for several hours. They drug in the ATF director, who basically refused to answer any questions at the time. But if you go watch that hearing, which is available online, the members of the Judiciary Committee were outraged, and they were saying, we want answers, but the ATF has never given any answers. And when I've made inquiries at DOJ, all I've heard is that ATF's explanation to the bosses at DOJ has been that A, Brian Malinowski was, quote, a significant gun trafficker, unquote, and B, he knew he was shooting at police that morning, and they don't know why he did that, but that's what he did, and they had no choice. That's what they've told their bosses. Now, if you read just what's in the Arkansas State Police investigation file post-shooting, which is not a real broad investigation, they kind of got in and got out. But you can tell that those two things are not true by just reviewing their investigation and the ATF search warrant they used, the affidavit they used to get a search warrant. I promise you, anything they knew about Brian Malinowski that tended to show he was a significant gun trafficker was in that affidavit. And they documented that over 3 years, the documented sales were 10 sales, 3 of them to undercover ATF agents. So they knew he'd sold 10 guns, and they had zero information about any profit he may have made, even though their own definition, this subjective definition, relies a lot to determine whether you're engaged in the business of self-harm. How much money are you making? Because one of the tests was, at that time, is your primary motivation for selling firearms livelihood and profit? This is a guy that made $260,000 a year as the airport director. He's the highest paid city employee in the city, Little Rock, Arkansas. This was a weekend hobby to this guy. Now, that's not the entire definition, and maybe he knew about that and relied on it too much because he was only making a couple of $1,000s or something when he went to a gun show. But that certainly would be an explanation somebody could offer that's not unreasonable. Well, I didn't think I needed that because this is not my primary motivation. I'm out here for fun. My livelihood and profit is at the airport. So anyway,
that's a big pitfall for all of us gun hobbyists. I happen to have an 03 FFL, which is the collector's license, and that specifically says that I can buy firearms as a licensed firearms license holder, but I can't operate in the business of operating firearms. And that's all it says. there's no definition of what am I, what am I doing? Because it's understood that I can and I have, and the ATF knows that I have sold firearms that I have acquired on my license. But and I've bought way more. Ask my wife. It's that nebulousness really does kind of turn into a sword of Damocles.
Well, one of the key things in the affidavit that they repeat over and over is that they, determined that he had legally purchased about 150 firearms over 3 years. Well, and that's not irrelevant. I mean, that would raise your suspicions a little bit. Well, what's he doing with 150 guns? But I know lots of people that have bought 150 guns in 3 years. That's not a number that, is incredible. But there's no dispute that those were legal purchases. They hadn't connected the dots at all to that and how many he had sold and in what circumstances he'd sold them. As far as I know, he conducted, 100% or 99% of his guns trading and selling activity out in the open in front of God and everybody. Made no attempts to conceal his conduct at the gun shows. And, criminals usually try to hide what they're doing if they intend to be committing crimes. He was out there where you didn't have to be Dick Tracy to figure out that Brian Malinowski was showing up at gun shows. He was right out there in the light of day.
So do you think there's going to be obviously both DOJ and ATF under a new management as we speak. Do you think there's going to be any movement?
Well, I've been pestering him. And frankly, when the new administration came in, I thought this would get more attention. All of us who read the papers can see that, there's never a dull moment in the Trump administration, and certainly at DOJ. I intentionally kind of stayed off the radar screen for a while because early on it just seemed like, well, there's a lot going on. I'm going to wait till things calm down. At some point, I realized things aren't going to calm down. So I started pestering them and have gotten a couple of audiences with the managers there. And I think they are going to look at it. Recently, or I think it was last week, 30 of our 35 Arkansas state senators sent a letter to President Trump and basically said what everybody in Arkansas is saying. Hey, we haven't forgotten about this. We don't understand what happened or why. We want to know why this happened and whether it can happen again. And we want you to direct DOJ to get to the bottom of it. So I think that was very helpful. And our members of our congressional delegation have also made, quiet efforts to encourage DOJ to take a look at it. But DOJ didn't really have an internal function that, to just ATF usually polices itself. FBI polices itself. So if you think that there's been misconduct or incompetent or reckless conduct, there's not really, there's the Office of Inspector General and they can look at it, but they usually take years to turn out a report on something. So, and to my knowledge, they have not been tasked to look at this yet. So it's ATF has successfully swept it under the rug to this far, but myself and several others are determined that no matter how long it takes, that they're going to be held accountable eventually. People in Arkansas, a lot of people in Arkansas want to know it. As one of the senators told me, he said, if what they did to Brian Malinowski is legal, somebody needs to change the law. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us feel that way.
Yeah. Well, we are pulling for you. I mean, especially since, no matter how you sit on the views of government and the ATF, at no point in time should we be able to be making comparisons to the ATF in this case to the ATF in Matthew Bracken's novel, Enemies Foreign and Domestic. If you haven't read it, please, it's amazing, but it's also
I'm not familiar with that.
Surprisingly poignant. It was written right after Ruby Ridge and Waco, so it had a lot of that anger in there, and one would hope that would turn very dated, but it hasn't.
Well, I'm a pro law enforcement guy, and I'm a lifelong conservative. I'm pro law enforcement. I'm a law and order guy, but I also think we need to hold law enforcement accountable, mm-hmm. and it's a tough job. A lot of the things they get criticized for happen in split seconds out in the field, and they get second guessed and video replays and what have you. But this is a little bit different. This was totally unnecessary, planned for days or weeks, and complete overkill for an investigation of this magnitude, and then bungled. So it's not like these were snap-second decisions. These were somebody approved this plan. Somebody led the operation. Somebody decided they were competent to do that. We need to know who made those decisions and why, because it is kind of frightening to think that law enforcement can, in a case of this magnitude, this is the lowest level regulatory violation I could imagine, and that they think it's okay to come out with the militaristic tactics that they use with untrained people and bungle it this badly. I mean, it cost this guy's life, and there's absolutely no reason for him to be dead. None. There were thousands of other combinations of options that they could have chosen that would have left Brian Malinowski alive. So I hope your listeners, your followers, do whatever they can and write a letter to your congressman and say you want answers to this, because I think as a nation we really need. This is really bigger than the loss of Brian Malinowski. We got to reinforce our constitutional rights and not have our doors kicked in at 6 a.m. and be shot in our own beds.
Yep. And this is a federal agency. So if wherever you're listening to us has the red, white, and blue flying overhead, then this applies to you. I'm so glad to hear that Brian Malinowski hasn't been forgotten and people are still pulling. And Bud, you seem like a great guy to be pulling for it. Thank you so much, Bud Cummins.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
So I know what's involved in trying to get guests, and usually we have to hustle and nag them and will you please come on the show? And so for someone to reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to talk about it, that's very much oh my God, yes, of course. Mm-hmm. We'd love to do this. So if you or anyone else who listens to this and are interested in appearing on the show, please let us know. Odds are we'd love to interview you.
Yes, and in the last month, if you asked for us to come on the show and you didn't get it, and you specifically were sent an email to me, send it again. I've been going through a lot, so I will. Things are getting much better now. My father's doing much better, and we're not traveling. So yeah, there's just that wasn't because I didn't love you. It's because a lot was going on. But yeah, another thing is just can you come on the show? Yes, but I'm available on this one day when you're not available, and you do the tag, and it might take a month for it to come through. The fact that literally it was 2 hours worth of work to get the interview, and the nice thing about it was this case that we have covered extensively. So yeah, this is good, and Bud was nice enough to send me a lot of extra stuff, such as the timeline that we were talking about, the letter of the politicians that are requesting that this case get reopened, and some video footage that one of which I was able to find on YouTube, and I just, instead of having to go into the trouble of uploading it, I grabbed their copy, but another one I wasn't actually able to find. So that is on the in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. So as to the topic itself, I really don't have anything to add because we, as you say, have discussed it extensively. Mm-hmm. And then Mr. Cummins came in and gave us a very exhaustive explanation. I feel like it's all been covered. So the only thing I have to say is thank you, Mr. Cummins, for coming on the show and telling us about this.
Yeah.
And I hope the lawsuit or civil suit, whatever, succeeds.
Yep. No, and again, I'm hoping just because the fact that we're under new management as far as on both the ATF and the DOJ, that's going to be the factor. Because of course, there's I don't think it's necessarily was directly Einstein, but it's often attributed to Einstein doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And in this case, the playing field has been changed, so we're no longer doing the same thing by asking this to be reopened.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were going to do the other attributed to Einstein quote. something like, the only two things that are infinite are the universe and stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe.
I'd forgotten about that one, but that is a delicious one.
Xander is a freelance electrician, which makes him a solderer of fortune.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. Weird was curious about my knowledge of soldering electronics, so for once I'm indulging him on a request. I used to have an IPC certification for soldering surface mount and through-hole components, combined with over 10 years of experience hand soldering circuit boards and inspecting same for problems. While an audio-only presentation has its limits, I can certainly share some of what I know. Let's start with the basics of equipment and materials. You'll want a temperature-controlled soldering iron, flux core solder, 90% or higher isopropyl alcohol, a clean surface, a way to ground both yourself and the workpiece, solder wick, and clean air. Magnification is also useful depending on how small you're working. Next to a microscope and specialty equipment, your soldering irons are your biggest investment. You must be able to set the temperature rather than a plain iron that you plug into the wall with a cord right out of the pencil, or one of the bulky soldering guns. These and a butane-powered soldering iron work adequately for tinning and soldering together wires with no circuit boards or other relatively delicate things nearby, but you can never be quite sure about the heat you're subjecting the item to. A good solid choice for soldering iron is the Hakko 951. Yes, Chinese-made, but it is consistent and reliable and stands the test of time. The tips for the handpiece can be quickly swapped out, and there's a stand that puts the device in sleep mode to prevent burning out the soldering tip. There's a wide variety for both general and specific uses. The conical end most folks think of for a soldering iron, plus fine point, various flat chisel-shaped ends, even soldering tips that fit over a computer chip to heat all the leads at once for removal. Sadly, as I was putting together show notes, or this segment, this particular model appears to be obsolete, and I have not tried the price equivalent Model 971. You want to apply the right amount of heat. Too much, and you're going to burn the circuit board, ruin components, burn off the flux before it can do its thing, and so on. Too little, and you can have a brittle solder joint, or reflexively push down hard with the iron, which does nothing but damage both the tip, the circuit board, and possibly the thing you're trying to solder. If pressure worked, we wouldn't bother heating it up. We want to be able to dial in the temperature since different applications have slightly different needs. 650 Fahrenheit for leaded solder, around 700 Fahrenheit for lead-free, is a good general rule of thumb. If you're, for example, soldering a surface mount LED with a soft plastic body, you might want to dial that temperature down to around 600 Fahrenheit. This is where practice and experience comes into play. I note that some models of soldering stations use the tip to set the temperature. The internal resistance of the tip will react to the applied power to limit the temp, or it will change the machine's internal settings. Those tend to be much higher-end machines, Weller brand if I recall. Much like firearms, you can easily buy something far more expensive than your skills can make use of, and a highly skilled person can get the most out of a cheaper machine, but be unable to achieve the necessary accuracy. There's also a bit of personal fit. I am extremely familiar with the Hakko model, and quite familiar with what I consider the best, which is JBC, though the latter runs to thousands of dollars for a basic setup. So, for a basic soldering iron starter, expect to spend at least $250 and more likely close to $500 to not cheap out between the base unit and various tips. For soldering iron tips, for general work, I recommend a standard conical tip, a smaller chisel, and a large chisel tip. You don't want something bigger than the pad on the circuit board you're soldering to, because that way lies burnt and ruined circuit boards. You might be sensing a theme here. And now on to solder wire. You will want a Rosen flux core solder wire of at least a couple different thicknesses. A 0.031 inch diameter is a fair all-around size, but for small fiddly things you want thinner, and for big chunky things thicker. I've gotten away with using thinner wire on bigger things by doubling and redoubling a length, or risking a glob of solder by touching heavier wire as briefly as I can. Heavy wire tends to suck heat away, though, and smaller wire results in leaving the iron on the board longer. You also want a rosin core and flux for electronics because acid flux will eat parts. A mistake I made over 10 years ago resulted in an automotive recall when I repaired circuit boards with the wrong flux. Plumbing and metalworking flux tends to be the acid type, so best be sure you're using solder labeled for electronics, and again, that is not acid type. Sounds almost like I'm describing Pokemon. Isopropyl alcohol is the cleaner of choice for the correct flux, removing excess material left over after the job is done. Even though it might say no clean, that just means it won't eat the electronics like acid. It can still encourage things like tin whiskers to grow and create problems later on, or make for contact problems on a connector surface. Flux is still necessary because it helps the solder flow and blend into the joint properly by cleaning away contamination and protecting the briefly molten metal until it becomes solid. Applying a liquid, it can result in it going where you don't need it, thus it needs to be removed. That is, applying a liquid flux can result in it going where you don't need it, thus it'll obviously have to be removed. A clean surface is an extension of the previous. Skin oils, food particles, grease, and so on are contaminants. You don't want food in your electronics, and you don't want electronics residues in your food, just like why you wash your hands after handling ammunition and firearms. Grit can also ruin the finish of an otherwise pleasant-looking part, or even damage LEDs and displays. Grounding is because static electricity is not your friend. A wrist strap tied to a grounding point, as well as a work mat for electronics attached to the same, drains static at a rate that won't blow the component that you just worked so hard to replace. You want your tools to be static safe as well, such as non-magnetic stainless tweezers. Many of the more professional soldering iron bases can also be grounded to the same point as yourself. Solder wick, or solder braid, is a copper braid, often with flux soaked into it, that wicks away unwanted solder, such as what's left on a pad after removing a component. If a part lead is through a circuit board, if it doesn't take too much heat to melt the solder in the hole, wick can be used instead of a vacuum tool for removing it as well. Lastly on the list I gave earlier is clean air. This is a safety thing, just as much as eye protection. Flux will give off a little bit of fumes and smoke when heated, and it is a big part of why I have asthma. I did a lot of soldering without the fumes being sucked or blown away. Just as tinnitus ruins the fun of having been at the range, lung damage ruins the fun and joy of working with metal. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about. By the by, a couple postscripts. I was listening to an early blooper reel, which almost had me reach for the wrong end of a soldering iron. That's how Weird ended up putting the disclaimer at the start. I need another one to listen to while I climb up on a roof in a couple days. And, speaking of Weird, folks might like it if you put the links in the show notes.
By the way, I totally saw that Pokemon reference with the acid type.
Me too, and I'm not really that big of a Pokemon fan, but I saw it coming.
Neither am I, but I mean, it's so in the zeitgeist that most people know what Pokemon are. The Pokemans. Actually, I had a
say that Z word again there, Weird.
What, Pokemans?
No, the word starting with Z.
Oh, zeitgeist?
Okay, you got it right that time.
Okay. Did I? Okay, fair enough. I'm checking that off. I've got.
Do you know what it means?
I know what it means, but I actually don't know the direct translation to it in German. Geist is ghost. Okay. I know that.
Yes. So Zeit means time in German, so it literally means time ghost.
Ooh.
But it can be more prosaically defined as the spirit of the time or the spirit of the age.
Thank you so much. I do love the roots of words.
Oh, you're welcome.
It also helps me use them more accurately, or sometimes less accurately. But yeah, I had a computer motherboard that started going bad, and I'm just like, well, everything else on it, it's fine. Can't we just fix it? And pointed out like, oh no, they have to go over like every single circuit and test them and all that and get them to work. And that was literally what Xander used to do. And also, I will say, as a rodent surgeon, the mention, just the nonchalant mention of a microscope, it's one of those like, oh yeah, no. Not only am I doing precision work, but I'm doing precision work at 40x magnification. Unfortunately here, many of us on the ACP crew are reaching the age where we creak when we walk. Miles talks about how to pick an orthopedic surgeon.
Just at me next time, Weird.
Hello, this is Miles with another South Paw Corner. In this episode, I am going to be talking about orthopedic surgeries, when you should be considering it, and how to find the best place in your area. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I am talking from a patient perspective. After having 4 separate surgeries for 3 different issues, 3 were for repairs and 1 was a hip replacement. The first thing to consider is if surgery is the right choice, and if having surgery will make your quality of life better. If so, then it is a good thing to look into. As an example, I lived with bone spurs growing into my Achilles tendon for 20 years, if not longer. And after doing the physical therapy and wearing a brace for years, which with how much I moved around for work, I broke 4 braces. I decided having surgery to remove and repair the damage was best for me. Now, with any surgery, there is a possibility that something will go wrong, which is why I did take so long to make the decision for the first surgery. Once you have come to the conclusion that you may need to have orthopedic surgery, you need to find a reputable doctor or organization to consult and give you your options. I will say that I lucked out, and the place my doctor recommended is one of the best places in the local area. That being said, if possible, talk to others who have had surgeries in your area. Check ratings for persons or places you are considering. As an example, when I had my partial tear in my bicep tendon, my wife looked up all the doctors at New England Orthopedic Surgeons, which is the place where I've had all my surgeries, and saw that the one that I had my first appointment with was the most qualified for both orthoscopic and invasive surgeries. After you have picked the doctor or office to take care of your issue, they will tell you the possible complications and the recovery time for the type of surgery you'll need. Also, you will need to do physical therapy sometimes before and always afterwards to regain your mobility and strength. A good doctor will also tell you the options that are available if surgery is not truly needed at the time. Sometimes just wearing a brace or having a cortisone shot will relieve the pain long enough for the injury to heal on its own. If you have any other questions for me on this, please contact me through Weird or Aaron, or I'm also usually stalking the ACP Facebook pages.
Also, this works for like any doctor. As many of you probably know, my wife had brain surgery. And I asked her neurosurgeon how many times he'd done the procedure. And he looked kind of annoyed because he's like, that's a lot, like over 200. And I'm like, that's a good number. That's a good number. Seem also, after it was done, somebody came up to me and said, he's really tired and he just wants to go on break. Is it all right if he just calls you instead of coming down here? And I said, that's fine. And he just sounded so bored and just ready to get over with. And I'm like, you know what? This is good news. You've been operating on my wife's head and like, you just want to just go sit down and take a break. That's good. Like, I don't want you to be excited.
Yeah. Nothing exciting happened. It was just completely routine. I could do it in my sleep.
Yes. Yeah. You want the doctor that's going to be bored to tears doing your surgery.
Mm-hmm. I really have nothing to add about this because while I have had surgeries, I've never had anything orthopedic done. Although, knowing my body, and I'm not getting any younger, and I already have problems with my knees and my back. My mother's already had a knee replacement. I'm sure I'm going to need one eventually, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I will say that my father has both knees and one hip replaced, and the total knee replacement was one of the more miraculous surgeries, because he went from walking with a cane and having a handicap placard on his car to, as soon as the doctors were allowing to put any weight on it whatsoever, he was walking with a cane faster than he had walked in years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, come on, Dad, they cut your leg off. They pretty much literally did. Though I will just say, my dad put it off for as long as possible because that knee doesn't heal. And so any wear and tear that you're putting on it with your day-to-day use is going to go up. And if you the longer you could delay it, the better, because that's the longer you're delaying when you need to have it replaced a second time. But also follow the instructions, because he has well outlasted the lifespan of the knees that he had, or definitely the older knee. And the doctor says it looks great. And that was because, he gave up running as soon as he had the knee replaced. He gave up tennis. He followed all the rules. And so that, and that clearly pays out.
So I'm sure, Weird, that you remember something that, I think boomers used to say, where's my flying car? I was promised flying cars by this point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't grow up with that. I grew up, with cyberpunk dystopias as my future. And we do kind of seem to be going down that path. And I'm just going, look, if we could just get affordable cyber with the dystopia, that would be great. Because I didn't get flying cars. I was promised bionics and direct neural interface into the net and things like that. And I would really love to be able to, see without needing glasses. So
yeah, that would be pretty cool. Though it's somewhere in the middle point. We're going to have people just walking around real life wearing VR goggles, and it's going to look pretty silly for a while.
Yeah. I mean, we almost had that, I think, with Google Glass.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's only a matter of time before Apple has their virtual goggles just be no, just wear them all the time.
I have to wonder if they're going to be precious and call it the II. Lowercase I, capital EYE.
Yes.
They probably won't. It'll be something like the iOptic or the iVision or something like that. Apple is very pretentious. But do you know who isn't pretentious, Weird?
Our listeners! Though I will have to say, I'm really quickly looking up there is an animal, I believe they're from Africa, called the II. Though actually, now that I'm looking at them, they're kind of nightmare fuel.
That looks like, what's that creature from Madagascar? I like to move it.
The lemurs.
Yes, it kind of looks like a lemur on like a meth bender.
Yeah, and they're from Madagascar as well. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, they are a lemur. They're a species of lemur.
Okay. What is that horrible picture?
That is its hand.
No, it's not. That is not a hand. That is the claw of a cryptid.
God, that is nightmare fuel.
Uh-huh.
So there, I will go the animal that I think I was thinking of, which is a loris.
Well, that's much cuter.
Look at this. They all look like, I'm not so sure about this.
Mm-hmm.
You sure this is a good idea? Maybe I'll just wait in the car. They're so cute and they're soft. I went to pat them. There. That'll erase the nightmare fuel of the fucking II.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to go into just read my part of the outro and I'll figure out how to undo this. I was hoping this would be an easy show to edit. I was wrong. Thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. So go to Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of their podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious ACP blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's WEERDworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word. However, I don't know what everything is linked there, but you definitely want to check out our Twix account, which is at Pink Pistols. And if you're on Facebook, be sure to check us out at Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols announcements. That's the public facing aspect of Pink Pistols, because everything else is private.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So I'm a slow Loris, and so I am cute and adorable and look just really cartoonish in pictures. And Weer'd is an II, which is pure nightmare fuel for Madagascar. Seriously, it's freaky. Our marsupials, one might even say our fursona, are assorted, and so is our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.